네, 여러분 안녕하십니까? 오늘 포럼의 사회를 맡은 이세라입니다. 이른 아침에도 불구하고 오늘 행사에 발걸음해 주신 모든 분들께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 코로나19 상황으로 화상, 대면, 하이브리드 방식으로 진행되는 근본 포럼에는 저 멀리 카리브 지역의 정부 관계자, 또 민간 전문가, 그리고 카리브 지역의 한국 대사님들께서 화상으로 참여하고 계십니다. 아울러 이번 포럼은 유튜브 외교부의 라틴 광장을 통해서도 현재 실시간 중계되고 있습니다. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, bienvenidos, señoras y señores. Welcome to the 10th High-Level Forum on the Korea-Caribbean Partnership. My name is Sarah, and today I have been given the honor to be the MC of this meaningful forum. Just before we begin, we'd like to show sincere gratitude for joining us today. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, we're not able to meet some participants face-to-face, but we're meeting online. But we're still very pleased to gather here all together. The government officials and experts from the Caribbean countries and Korean diplomats in the Caribbean countries are joining us today through online. This forum is also being broadcast live on Latin Plaza by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Korea on YouTube. You can use receiver for simultaneous interpretations on your desk. 네, 그럼 지금부터 제10차 한-카리브 고위급 포럼을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 그럼 먼저 오늘 포럼에 참석해 주신 모든 분들께 드리는 최종권 외교부 1차관님의 환영사가 있겠습니다. Before we fully begin the forum, let me turn the podium to distinguished guests for welcoming address. For the welcoming address, it is such a great pleasure that I introduce to you this special guest, Jong-kwon Che, First Vice Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause. 여러분 모두 뜨거운 박수를 맞아 주십시오.
Good morning. I'm going to deliver my address in Korean. Please understand that I deliver my address in Korean. Her Excellency Sandy Peters Phillips, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Commerce of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, His Excellency Erwin Larrock, Secretary General of CARICOM, His Excellency Rodolfo Savonghe, Secretary General of ACS, Excellencies of the Caribbean countries, and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to extend my appreciation to the excellencies and delegates who are participating in the 10th High-Level Forum on the Korean-Caribbean Partnership. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this forum is taking place virtually through video conferencing. Despite the late hours in the Caribbean region, we are joined by the delegates from the region. I'd like to convey my special appreciation to you all. Also, taking this opportunity, I'd like to congratulate on St. Vincent and Grenadines, the chair of CARICOM, for taking over the presidency of the UN Security Council in November this year. With an aim to promote regional friendship, the High-Level Forum on the Korea-Caribbean Partnership was founded in 2011. This year marks the 10th anniversary already. Throughout the past 9 forums, both parties have sought cooperation in commonly interested areas. Despite the geographical distance, the two regions have cooperated on various agendas, including e-government and climate change. In this process, our cooperation has been strengthened. Especially the CARICOM e-government project and IT specialist training have served as opportunities to deepen and expand our cooperation. Now, based on our past achievements, we need to mull over another decade ahead. The Caribbean region is home to indigenous Caribbeans, Europeans, Africans, and Indian descendants. Throughout the history, various cultural backgrounds have created cultural openness and diversity. 14 countries in this region established CARICOM in 1973. In 1995, the community envisioned in creating the Greater Caribbean, encompassing the countries along the Caribbean coast. to include South American countries, and this vision resulted in the establishment of ACS. Although Korea and the Caribbean countries are located far, we have been long allies. Starting with our first diplomatic ties with Jamaica in 1962, we have established diplomatic relations with all 14 CARICOM countries. Especially the Greater Caribbean Map Building Project embarked in 2014 and the Caribbean Shoreline Resilience Assessment Project in 2017, and their achievements have served as good indicators that Korea and the Caribbean regions have greater cooperative potential. Excellencies, we are facing unprecedented and transnational crisis, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. President Moon Jae-in delivered an address to WHO General Assembly in May, and also during his address at UN General Assembly in September, he emphasized freedom for all. President Moon emphasized that to respond to global crisis, international cooperation is the key.
Since the early days of this pandemic, starting with the exchange of letters between Mia Mottley, chairman of the CARICOM, and Prime Minister of Barbados and South Korean President Moon Jae-in, Korea and the Caribbean region have sought cooperation to respond to COVID-19. Korea has provided Caribbean countries with equipment to prevent the disease, including personal protective equipment, and also shared our successful experiences, thereby strengthening our collective effort to respond to the pandemic. The South Korean government does not want to just stop there and wishes to further expand and advance a future-oriented cooperation with the Caribbean region. Therefore, we would like to suggest visions to establish post-COVID-19 Korea-Caribbean comprehensive partnership as follows. First of all, we will establish a Korea-CARICOM Cooperation Fund by 2021 to support both economic and social development in the Caribbean region. This fund will be first used to build capacity in health and medical treatment to respond to COVID-19, and afterwards it will also be used in other cooperation areas such as responding to disasters, food security, and so forth. Second, the Korean government will make use of the Korean version of New Deal, which is a growth strategy to prepare for the post-corona era, to carry out a customized development cooperation between Korea and the Caribbean. In particular, we will develop new development areas that cater to the needs of the region, such as digital transformation and new renewable energy. Third, the Korean government will take note of the unique characteristics of Caribbean countries that are maritime states and will spearhead the global effort to respond to climate change. The Korean government has also set a goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 under the Green New Deal policy and is joining other countries in the endeavor towards sustainable development. It will also continue to keep pace with the international society, including Caribbean countries, regarding global issues such as climate change, environment, and maritime security. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a saying in Trinidad and Tobago that goes, "One hand washes the other. Together they wash the face." It is analogous to a Korean saying, "It takes two hands to clap." In this era of COVID-19, I believe we need to remember this maxim to put the spirit of solidarity and cooperation into practice. Once again, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to those who have made great effort to hold the 10th High-Level Forum on the Korea-Carib Partnership. I hope this forum will be a meaningful starting point for post-corona comprehensive partnership between Korea and the Caribbean, and your continued support and cooperation will be very much appreciated. And as the first Vice Foreign Minister, including Caribbean regions, cooperation with those regions is one of the priorities for the South Korean Foreign Ministry. Thank you so much.
네, 따뜻한 말씀으로 오늘 세미나를 열어주신 세종건 차관님께 감사드립니다. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for opening the forum with warm greetings. 네, 그럼 지금부터 본격적으로 포럼을 시작하겠는데요. 먼저 카리브 지역의 코로나19 영향, 대응, 그리고 전망이라는 주제로 어인 라루크 카리브 공동체 사무총장님의 기조 연설이 있겠습니다. Thank you very much. Now moving on to our first keynote speech, I'd like to introduce Erwin LaRoque, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community. He will deliver a keynote speech on the issue of Caribbean's response to COVID-19 and its outlook for future. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. 여러분 환영의 박수를 부탁드립니다.
Your Excellency Choi Jong-kun, First Vice Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Your Excellency Rodolfo Sabonje, Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States. Representatives of member states of the Caribbean community, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that we are gathered today for the 10th High-Level Forum on the Republic of Korea Caribbean Partnership is indicative of the strength of the relations between CARICOM and the Republic of Korea. Regrettably, unlike the previous 9 fora, we cannot be together in person, but the new normal of virtual meetings forced upon us by the COVID-19 pandemic still allows us to conduct our business effectively and efficiently. Since the World Health Organization announced the COVID-19 outbreak as a global pandemic on the 11th of March 2020, it has quickly evolved into one of the greatest threats to human society and the second worst pandemic of all time. Notwithstanding, the Caribbean community, CARICOM, has been working tirelessly and collectively to ensure the safety of its people and protect our economies from its onslaught. A CARICOM-wide public health approach was adopted from the very outbreak of the virus, even before a pandemic was declared. Early successes in controlling the spread of COVID-19 required swift activation of the regional response and arriving at that delicate balance of ensuring the health and safety of the citizens of the community on the one hand, while facilitating economic activities on the other. This has not been an easy balancing act. Following an emergency meeting of our health ministers in February, a working group was established to prepare a regional protocol which would define a standard response by member states to address the threats posed by COVID-19. The heads of government then met in special emergency session on the 1st of March and agreed to the protocol. As a result, we have been relatively successful in managing the health aspects of the pandemic with less than 1,000 deaths across our 15 member states and 5 associate members. The Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, our lead institution in the sector, has served us well with support from the University of the West Indies, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the Regional Security System, the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, and health officials across the community, all coordinated by the CARICOM Secretariat. We have also benefited from the assistance of the World Health Organization and the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, which enabled us to gain access to essential COVID-19 medical supplies, personal protective equipment, PPEs, and testing kits and reagents needed to conduct testing. Countries such as South Korea, Canada, the United Kingdom, Cuba, India, China, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and the United States, as well as the European Union and the international financial institutions, also rendered assistance. South Korea's generous assistance, for which we are deeply grateful, has been directed towards strengthening the health sector in member states, supporting CARPHA, and the acquisition of PPEs. The community is highly appreciative of the generosity of all our partners. In the early days of the pandemic, CARICOM member states experienced significant challenges in sourcing test kits, PPEs, and therapeutics. the community designed a common procurement platform with a central logistics center to facilitate distribution of the items. PAHO and the WHO assisted us in procuring those items, and were it not for their intervention, our health situation could have been worse. In that regard, we welcome the COVAX facility, an initiative to guarantee equitable access to safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines. 6 CARICOM member states have been identified for advanced market commitment, a financing instrument to support the procurement of vaccines for low-income countries. The remaining member states have committed to the facility as self-financing countries and have obtained support from development partners in facilitating the down payment. However, the quota for our region will only cover 15% of the population. Currently, some of our member states are continuing to report an increase in positive cases in the form of clusters and community spread. Others are reporting very low rates of transmission. Among the preventive measures adopted by our countries has been the closure of borders to limit the importation of cases. Most member states have reopened their borders with protocols and testing procedures in place to minimize the risk of imported cases. The global spread of COVID-19 was propelled by travel, and the curtailment of that activity has acutely affected the Caribbean, which is the world's most tourism and travel-dependent region. In many countries, tourism represents close to 50% of GDP. It is a major source of employment and government revenue and generates more than 60% of foreign exchange earnings. Tourism is also the driver of a host of other related economic activities, such as financial services, food and beverage, transportation, and cultural industries. Although international tourism has restarted in some member states with established health protocols, it is no surprise that the containment measures adopted for the COVID-19 pandemic have had a significant negative impact on the sector. Indeed, the pandemic has had a devastating effect on the overall economy in CARICOM states. CARICOM has been acknowledged as being the worst hit region economically amongst all developing countries. Revenue losses associated with the virus average between 30 to 40%. Overall, most countries are projected to experience double-digit contractions in economic activity in 2020. The International Monetary Fund has forecast an average decline of 13% for the region, but some CARICOM countries will experience a decline as high as 20%. This projection could worsen in light of the reinstatement of lockdown measures in tourism-sourced countries in Europe. Sharply rising expenditures related to the pandemic to provide healthcare and financial support for citizens and businesses, together with plummeting revenues, have resulted in higher fiscal deficits and substantially elevated debt levels. Further, CARICOM states are now faced with a protracted recovery amidst a dismal global economic outlook. The IMF has forecast that the global economy faces a long, uneven, and uncertain ascent back to pre-pandemic levels, and it will be prone to setbacks. This will imperil flows of foreign investment, as well as remittances which support the social safety net in many of our countries. Given the slow pace of the global recovery, the persistence of the pandemic due to the lack of a vaccine, and the prevailing risks globally, the outlook for 2021 and the medium term remains highly uncertain for CARICOM. CARICOM's recovery will be undertaken from a position on which the IMF has concluded that, and I quote, "the sudden stop in tourist arrivals and local lockdowns was equivalent to a cardiac arrest," end quote. Our countries face large financing needs. Given that many countries had low fiscal buffers and elevated debt levels prior to COVID, financing pressures have intensified. All of this is happening while our region continues to face the major existential threat of climate change and rebuilding from the destructive effects of natural disasters. In this challenging economic context, the community's experience in sourcing financing to address the health and economic crises has revealed the insensitivity of traditional financing sources to the peculiar circumstances confronting CARICOM states. As small, middle-income countries, many are locked out of access to concessional financing due to the use of GNI per capita as a main criterion. This is despite their economic vulnerabilities, highly susceptible to external shock, and dependence on external capital flows. In fact, this criterion was also applied to the financing instrument for the COVAX facility through the use of the per capita figures for 2019, without regard to the economic reality of the first 9 months of 2020. It is incomprehensible that the international community persists in using 2019 per capita figures as the basis to determine which countries get access to vaccines on a concessional basis. COVID presents a health, economic, and humanitarian crisis. There is urgent need to change the criteria for access to the COVAX facility and for concessional financing. Recovery from the current challenges of COVID presents an opportunity for CARICOM states to build back better, taking into account the need to also build resilience to the effects of climate change. This will require significant amounts of capital to achieve a successful recovery. Our community has several proposals to mitigate the risks in response to the crisis, as well as provide support to safeguard lives and maintain livelihoods. These include 1. Refinancing COVID-related debt into long-term low-interest bonds, thereby postponing the debt servicing payments into the foreseeable future. 2. Comprehensive debt relief for small, vulnerable, middle-income states like CARICOM. And 3. Designing a variety of resilience financial instruments aimed at mobilizing and providing appropriately priced funding to build economic and climate resilience. CARICOM looks forward to the support of countries such as South Korea to advocate for these issues on its behalf, particularly in fora such as the G20 and the OECD Development Assistance Committee, where decisions with a global impact are taken and our member states do not have a voice. The economic recovery of member states will no doubt depend to quite an extent on external factors. However, building back better using already established CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, presents the best platform for achieving economic and climate resilience, as well as sustainable growth and development. The COVID pandemic and its consequences have demonstrated an urgent need for digital transformation and to build out the CARICOM single ICT space. The community has designed a regional digital development strategy and action plan to drive our progress in this sector. We recognize that there is a significant digital gap which we need to address urgently and for which we will need assistance. ICT application in education, health, commerce, and the conduct of government business is essential going forward. Digital technologies are therefore central in any strategy for an inclusive recovery. What this pandemic has underlined is the critical importance of cooperation in combating such challenges. This forum is an illustration of the importance of working together across borders, pooling knowledge, insights, and experience to help each other to better weather the prevailing storms. I look forward to the outcome of this 2020 high-level forum. I thank you.
네, 어인러르크 카리브 공동체 사무총장님 감사합니다. 다음으로 로돌포 사봉의 카리브 국가연합 사무총장님의 기조 연설이 있겠습니다. Thank you so much for your wonderful speech, Mr. Lavroque. And our next speaker is Rodolfo Sabonghe, the Secretary General of Associations of Caribbean States. Please welcome him with the round of applause. 네, 역시 환영의 박수 부탁드립니다.
Been covered already. It is a privilege to be here at this forum as a platform for the productive exchange of ideas and information on the promotion of mutually beneficial partnerships between Korea, Latin America, Caribbean countries. This forum, however, comes at an unprecedented time of economic and financial crisis, in which recovery will require regional solidarity and strong engagement. I wish to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for the invitation to participate at this very important meeting, as I present the current situation and the outlook for the future through the perspective of the Association of Caribbean States. First, allow me to introduce you to the ACS. The ACS was created in 1994 with the aim of promoting cooperation, consultation, and concerted action among all the countries and territories of the Caribbean. The full membership of the association is comprised of 4 subgroups. CARICOM is an organization that currently consists of 15 Caribbean states and territories, of which 14 are full members of the ACS. Central America, which consists of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. The group of 3, Colombia, Mexico, and Venezuela. And what we call the non-group, which consists of Cuba, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. In addition to full member countries, the ACS also has 11 associate members and 14 social actors. This slide highlights how the ACS serves as regional coordinator for Latin American countries, CARICOM, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, each organization with its own very distinctive charters and objectives, all united by the Caribbean Sea. In summary, the ACS coordinates actions and programs amongst 36 members and associates, representing a population of more than 295 million people, trade of approximately 1.7 trillion US dollars, in dollars of 2018, a total GDP of 2.6 trillion US dollars in 2018, 112 billion US dollars in foreign direct investment, and a total of 28 observer countries, 4 observer organizations, and 14 social actors. According to its charter, the ACS has the following working areas: sustainable tourism, trade, development, and external economic relations, transport, disaster risk reduction, Caribbean Sea Commission, cooperation, and resource mobilization. I took office as Secretary General of the ACS on November 2nd of this year, and in light of the current situation, I propose the following lines of action to be the high priorities during my tenure. First of all, increase competitiveness, attract foreign direct investment, develop and implement a sustainable tourism strategy, and most importantly, mitigate the effects of climate change. All of this through an acceleration of digital transformation, as has been mentioned before, and improvements in connectivity and logistics in the region. The relations between the Republic of Korea and the ACS started in 1998, when Korea became an observer country to our association, and was monetized in 2008 through a cooperation agreement which was signed between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea and the ACS. Korea has also participated in 3 of our international cooperation conferences in 2017, 2019, and 2020. The Republic of Korea provided financial support to the ACS to collaborate on the following projects: the creation of the map of maritime routes, project initiated in 2014. The second, which is currently in progress, is the Sandy Shorelines project, and its objective is to improve the resilience of coastal communities to climate change and sea level rise. The impact of COVID in the region has been more severe than in other parts of the world. As in other parts of the world, the most significant impact has been in health services. Lockdowns to reduce infection brought about an immediate reduction in economic activity, affecting supply and demand for goods and services. Our region is heavily dependent on tourism, transportation, and commodity trades, all of which were severely impacted by a downturn in commodity prices, which caused a dramatic decrease in foreign trade, which also caused a significant drop in fiscal revenue. So in summary, the region is one of the worst hit in economic terms, suffering a huge increase in unemployment and therefore an increase in inequality and poverty. As seen in this slide, generated by the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, Latin America and the Caribbean were already experiencing a 7-year trend of slow economic growth. The pandemic has worsened the situation. Compared with other regions, Latin America and the Caribbean is by far one of the most affected by COVID, where the IMF projections expect the world GDP to drop by approximately 2.9%, advanced economies 8%, and Latin America and the Caribbean expected to drop by 9.5%. As I mentioned, many economies in the region are heavily dependent on tourism. And as you can see in this slide, with data from ECLAC, most importantly is the impact that this will cause on employment. What is worse is that the recovery projections for this sector are not good. Some experts expect the upturn to begin in 2021, others in 2022, all depending on the availability of a massively produced and distributed vaccine. In summary, there is an urgent need for economic diversification in the region. How can we achieve this? First and foremost, we need to conduct a comprehensive assessment of the economic effects of COVID. A general line of action is to strengthen the health and agricultural sector, accelerate digital transformation, take advantage of regionalization of trade and nearshoring activities, and improve value-added services. Diversification of the economies provide value added to our products. And of course, we need to use of innovative and smart agricultural technologies. Support to micro, small, and medium enterprises, regional integration and assistance from donors and partners, and of course, multilateralism must be at the core. Increased fiscal space and the need for more favorable financing conditions have been mentioned before. Strengthen production capabilities and develop new strategic sectors. Inclusive and sustainable development and governance coherent with the 2030 agenda, and promote the creation of public-private partnerships that will bring the private sector to the table. This is why the ACS is the most suitable organization to accomplish all of this, because we're a strategic and unique platform for cooperation, consultation, and concerted action in the greater Caribbean region. We are well positioned to increase the impact of programs and projects. The greater Caribbean is a young, diversified, and dynamic region with appetite for innovation and entrepreneurship. And the ACS is a one-stop window to the greater Caribbean. I thank you very much.
네, 로돌프 사봉의 카리브 국가연합 사무총장님 감사합니다. Thank you so much for your insightful speech, Mr. 사봉해. 네, 다음으로 차관님과 오늘 포럼 주제 및 발표에 참여해 주시는 주요 참석자분들 간의 사진 촬영이 있겠습니다. 차관님, 또 포럼 자장 및 발제자님, 그리고 카리브 연안국 주한 대사님들 모두 앞으로 나오셔서 사진 촬영에 응해 주시기 바랍니다. Now I'd like to invite participants to the stage for taking picture. I'd like to ask you, the main participants, Vice Minister, moderator, presenters, and all diplomats from the Caribbean countries to come to the stage and take a picture together.
조개 해운군마 평산청 군수 해구 현가몽어 조부장 조기 부별라 지장대 등대 청다리가 우리 좌우나졸 근근모조리 상어술 찌는 치준치 멸치 삼치 가재 개구리까지 영을 듣고 어전에 입시하여 대왕극의 절은 대대사성 두목 방청사 조개 해운고마 평산청 군수 해구 현가몽어 조부장 조기 부별라 지상대 승대 청다리가 우리 좌우나졸 근근모조리 상어술 치눈치 준치멸 삼치 가재 개구리까지 영을 듣고 어전에 입시하여 대왕극의 절은
일시에 따라 토끼를 해워살듯 진왕만리 장성사듯 사냥싸움에 맞춰싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부두치 잡는 모양 영문출사 도적 잡듯 토끼의 두 귀를 꽉 잡고 하나둘 금금모질이 술령수 일시에 따라 토끼를 해워살듯 진왕만리 장성사듯 사냥싸움에 맞춰싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부두치 잡는 모양 영문출사 도적 잡듯 토끼의 두 귀를 꽉 잡고 하나둘 금금모질이 술령수 일시에 따라 토끼를 해워쌀지 진왕만리 장성사듯 사냥싸움에 맞춰싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부딪혀 잡는 모양 영문출사듯 적잡듯 토끼 두 귀를 꽉 잡고 개 같으면 뚝 쫓다 삼복 따르면 너를 잡어 약계장도 조커니와 네 간을 내어 오개탕 다려먹고 네가 죽을 벗겨내어 잘량 모서 깔게 되면 아열내종 혈담에는 만병의 추네 만병의 추네 만병의 추네 명약이라 아이고 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 그것이 우리 수공남혈하고 하는 것이다.
네, 그럼 지금부터 관련 대주제 아래 세션을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션, 포스트 코로나 보건의료 협력에 대해 살펴보겠는데요. 첫 번째 세션은 이종구 글로벌 보건안보대사 겸 서울의대 교수님께서 좌장을 맡아주시겠습니다. 아울러 한국 측 발표 및 토론자로 황경태 외교부 중남미국장님, 김성욱 분당서울대병원 국제협력팀장님께서 참석해 주시겠습니다. Without further delay, we're moving on to our first session. The topic will be on the issue of the era of post-COVID-19 and public health. First of all, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Jong-gu Lee, who is Ambassador for Global Health Security, Republic of Korea, and our panels, Kyung-tae Hwang and Sung-woo Kim. Mr. Hwang is Director General for Latin America and Caribbean Affairs of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Mr. Kim is Director of International Cooperation Team at Seoul National University. 네, 세 분 앞으로 모시겠습니다. 따뜻한 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jong-gu Lee. I'm nominated for the Ambassador for Global Health Security from the June. I'm in charge of the primary health care and the infection epidemiology in the Seoul National University School of Public Health and College of Medicine. I'm honored for chair of the 10th Partnership Forum. First speaker is Dr. Rhoda Phillips. He is the Senior Medical Officer of Health, Ministry of Health and Wellness, Barbados. Today, I checked early morning. I checked the WHO dashboard of the COVID-19. Barbados have 243 confirmed cases and 9 deaths. Maybe it is not high compared to the other Caribbean countries. I know that most of countries do their best for overcome the COVID-19. We faced the second surge of outbreak. We are worried about the huge outbreak of the EU and Latin America, including Latin America and the East Mediterranean area. We need to cooperate for overcome this unprecedented outbreak to eliminate the disease. So I invite Dr. Phillips here, Caribbean response, and scrutinize the weak point and the strong point to seek alliance, response, and cooperation point. Dr. Phillips, we have floor. You have floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Good morning to colleagues in the Republic of Korea. Good afternoon or good evening to colleagues in the Caribbean. Given the history of collaboration and the continued threat that is posed by COVID-19, the region is quite vulnerable. The world is quite vulnerable. And we believe that our shared experiences can help us to better deal with this threat. So we're grateful for the opportunity of this forum in which we can share a bit about our experience and hear a bit about your experience and both be better for it. I have noted and I appreciate the title of the forum, which makes mention of the post-COVID era. And certainly we are hoping that this post-COVID era will begin quite soon as a result of our general public health efforts, including our efforts to deploy the effective vaccine as soon as that is available. what what I do want to do is to make sure I have this up. Yes. What I want to do is to give a flavor for our experience here in Barbados by speaking a bit about our situation, how we've responded, and to mention some areas that we think may be potentially considered for collaboration. So as was mentioned, Barbados has had 243 confirmed cases since the beginning of the pandemic, and up to the current time, we've only had 7 cases, 7 deaths. This particular graphic is taken from a a tool produced by the University of the West Indies, which is published daily, and which presents information on the CARICOM region and what's happening in terms of COVID. Now, daily, the Ministry of Health puts out press releases, press briefings, as well as a dashboard, and we have a snip of the dashboard on the slide that is being shared. So this dashboard speaks to numbers of persons in isolation, the age range of people who've been affected, as well as the number of tests that have been completed within Barbados. Now, at the beginning of this situation, the Ministry of Health was faced with considering how we would plan for and how we would respond to the threat of COVID-19 with pandemic potential at that time. And what the ministry did was to create a document that spoke to roles of various agencies, including government agencies and private sector agencies, and how we could work together to deal with this threat. The document is structured and has triggers for particular responses depending on what is happening on island with the cases and our capacity to respond. So there are phases 0 to 3, with phase 0 being no cases on island, no detected cases, and phase 3 where there's widespread cases and the system is overwhelmed. One of the important mechanisms that has been operational and that has helped us to respond to the realities of COVID-19 in Barbados is a mechanism that has been stood up by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, but that pulled in stakeholders from across society, both public and private sector, including government partners, partners in healthcare, partners that deal with emergencies, partners that deal with other matters, including spiritual matters. Outside of Ministry of Health, at the national level, we've had the Cabinet Subcommittee on COVID and Cabinet more generally making those highest level policy decisions. The Augmented National Security Council making decisions where we have to deal with threats to the country. And the Social Partnership, which is a special mechanism that we have where the government, in partnership with the labor union movement and the business community, makes or reflects on and advises on decisions so that the entire country is represented in making these decisions. Other partners which have been key in our response have been the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the Ministry of Tourism and International Transportation. Here are some key points in our experience with COVID so far. We started doing testing aided by the Pan American Health Organization. They came in country and assisted our staff in building local capacity for testing. We continue to have support from the Caribbean Public Health Agency as the regional expert public health agency and their reference lab capacity to support, but we've been able to build local testing capacity for PCR testing for COVID-19. And we confirmed our first case about a month later. And then on the 28th of March, when we had 24 cases, the government took a preemptive decision to put the country under curfew. And from that, we transitioned straight into a full lockdown. That lockdown was ended in July. And on the 12th of July, we had resumption of commercial air traffic, which had been discontinued during the lockdown. Since the end of the lockdown, we have been generally successful in ensuring that there is not local spread. We've had one situation where we had a cluster of cases, but otherwise, all of the cases that we've had since the 12th of July have been imported cases that have been in pretty much detected at the airport or while individuals were in quarantine. And that has been key to our continued control of COVID to this point. Now, there are a variety of mechanisms that the Ministry of Health and the government more generally has been using in our effort to manage this situation. Within Ministry of Health, we have a surveillance unit that collates, analyzes, and produces reports on the situation. We also have a team that's referred to as a national surveillance team. This is led by public health nurses and is staffed by those nurses and other persons, and their role is to ensure that persons remain in quarantine and persons remain well, and that if there are any cases that need to be further investigated, that this can be done quickly. We have our contact tracing teams in the community, which assist us in ensuring that we are able to quickly detect, quarantine, and test potential contacts. The collaboration with the University of West Indies has been particularly important. I would have shown the slide previously that pulls from information generated by the university on the situation across the region. Additionally, during the lockdown, the University of the West Indies was particularly important in that they deployed their staff alongside those of the Ministry of Health to assist in surveillance, contact tracing, and reporting. And they've continued to work alongside us in terms of preparing public health evidence briefs on various topics as we require. There's another unit is referred to as the COVID-19 monitoring unit. And what this unit is responsible for is reviewing proposed protocols, particularly those from the private sector, but also from non-health agencies. And it is also responsible for going out into the community and having a look at what's happening and being the eyes and the enforcement arm of the Ministry of Health and the government more generally in terms of managing the situation locally. Infrastructure has been an important issue. We would have started our experience with COVID early in the year with just 4 beds of purpose-built communicable disease control capacity with ventilators and so on. This is a purpose-built facility that would have been stood up when the world was facing the threat of Ebola, and we were able to press it into use in anticipation and in early stages of a response. But we understood very clearly from the situation around the world, as well as from projections done locally, that we would need much more capacity than that. So efforts were started to create capacity for an isolation center as well as for quarantine. And we turned to the military to make use of some of their facilities. We temporarily used a military facility for isolation and quarantine, while another facility was fully retrofitted to be a 140 bedded isolation facility with capacity for everything from regular care all the way up to intensive care. So three levels, sort of intensive care, high dependency, and then regular clinical care. The engagement with the private sector has been key in terms of us expanding our quarantine capacity, and we have significant capacity. There are beds that are permanently committed, and then there are beds that are made available as there is need. Human resources was another issue, and we very quickly dedicated or created dedicated roles in terms of quarantine and isolation in particular. We reorganized existing roles so that they can be supportive of the COVID effort, and then we mobilized additional resources, including the Cuban Medical Brigade, volunteers, including for our hotline, and we created a capacity, a new category of officer called community health liaison officers, who are officers who represent all of the communities across Barbados, the 30 odd communities, and they are familiar with their communities. They're very keen, and they were given basic training that allows them to support efforts in terms of contact tracing and community engagement more generally. Communication has been very, very important because we're dealing with a new threat, and we were learning as we went along. So the Government Information Service was key to getting information out, particularly to the public. There was a specialized communication group in the Prime Minister's office that liaised with advertising, marketing, and media companies more generally, and they dealt with special messaging. There's a 24/7 hotline that individuals can call to get information, deals a lot with queries around travel protocols, as well as facilitating testing. The collaboration with tourism and with foreign affairs has been very important in terms of engaging with individuals intending to travel to Barbados and engaging with the diaspora, as well as with the diplomatic community locally. Protocols, protocols, protocols. These documents have been important in terms of making sure that we have a common understanding around what is to be done and how it is to be done. There were many protocols that were generated. The most important, in a sense, or the most widely talked about, would certainly have been the travel protocols, which speak to what's required for individuals to come to Barbados, when they have to do it, how it's documented, how they are managed when they come in, they're quarantined, and how we assess them as being fit for release from quarantine. We also generated a lot of guidelines to support the reopening of the country after the lockdown, and we have documentation that speaks to how we will manage and disseminate the vaccine once that becomes available. As we reflect on the reality in Barbados, and as would have been mentioned in the previous presentation, the reality in the Caribbean, that many of our islands are tourism dependent, and therefore we need to maintain open borders in order to ensure economic activity. And therefore, there is a lot that we need to do in terms of ensuring adequate testing and in terms of managing individuals who are in quarantine, managing individuals who need to contact trace. So looking at the experience of the Republic of Korea, we believe that the safe and efficient testing, including through drive-through centers, as well as the use of digital technologies, we believe that those things have been key to your success, and we believe that there are lessons that we can share as we potentially speak about these issues, what your experience has been, and what our experience has been as well. And our public health lab is well equipped and has been doing testing, but we understand that if we are to ramp up to tourist arrival numbers similar to those that we would have experienced prior, we are going to need to do a lot more, and we're going to need to do things differently. So we believe that there may be beneficial discussions to have around the business of technology procurement and technology management for lab services. So that is the view, that is my reflection from Barbados in terms of the situation, our response, and the potential areas of collaboration. I am thankful again for the opportunity to share, and I look forward to the question and answer, as well as to continued collaboration between CARICOM and South Korea. I thank you.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I think it might be a successful status so far. The very good situation, I think. It is important strategy is high-level politics was mobilized, activated in early stage. It is very important point. And then you have the EOC, Central Control Tower. It is very important role for coordinate and control the COVID-19. And 5 points is a very excellent point, monitoring and surveillance, infrastructure of the health facility, and human resource development and risk communication. This is 5 is a very important point to the combat the COVID-19. Thank you very much again. Next speaker is Dr. Joyce St. John. She in charge of the executive director, Caribbean Public Health Agency. You have floor.
Thank you very much. It's quite a privilege to be part of this forum. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I had permission to share my presentation. Can everyone see my presentation? So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm hoping to share with you quickly who we are, what we do, who we serve, the proposed partnership with the Republic of Korea, the support to public health, opportunities for cooperation. So who are we? CARFA is the amalgamation of 5 regional health institutions, and it was established in 2011 and started to operate in 2013. It's headquartered in Trinidad and Tobago with campuses in St. Jamaica. St. Lucia focuses on environmental health and sustainable development, and Jamaica focuses on medicine's quality control and surveillance. And our vision is healthy people, healthy spaces, healthy Caribbean, even during the pandemic. And this is who we serve. 26 member states with languages, English, Spanish, French, and Dutch, and a myriad of cultures. but it's a rather interesting group and a very strong group in terms of public health. So, what has been our role in supporting the member states generally and specifically during the COVID 19 outbreak? And it has been one of resource mobilization, risk communication, provision of advice to non health sectors, and the coordination of the public health response, all grounded in health security. So, the public health support of the Republic of Korea to the CARICOM region is just about to start. It's pending approval, but this is the support that has been promised. Training and fieldwork support for persons undertaking the Caribbean regional field epidemiology and laboratory training. Levels 2 and 3 advanced. The annual maintenance of CARFA's BSL 3 lab, which is certified and available to perform tests for infectious diseases, not just for COVID 19. Amplification of testing through the purchase of Kingfisher Flex purification system, which will reduce the time taken to test samples by 50%. This is massively needed at this time. We also are hoping that there will be support to 2 regional IATA infectious substance shipping the trainer workshops, and at least 1 national stakeholder meeting in 4 of the CARFA member states. So to give you an idea of the kind of work that the funding can support, I'm going to let you know the kind of work we have been doing during this pandemic. So as at 21st October, we've done 38 trainings with over 6,000 persons trained from 49 countries, including all 26. So you can see that the reach is far and wide. And some of the trainings that we have done: mosquito-borne disease management during COVID-19, laboratory diagnostics and patient immunity. Over 113 people reached in that one training. And tackling community spread of COVID-19. 121 persons reached, and for mosquito-borne, a nice record of 230 persons reached. And this is the BSL-3 laboratory that I spoke about earlier. It has been working to support COVID-19 and other infectious diseases of concern. So this allows the kind of safety level that is required to ensure not only that you have proper testing, but the laboratory technologies are safe. And remember, I spoke about timely, accurate testing. That piece of equipment is going to help CARFA to maintain an average turnaround time, which we have maintained since we started testing in February, of 24 to 48 hours. Now, that is not easy. So we are really looking forward to that piece of equipment. So what are some of the opportunities that exist in the CARICOM region as a whole? And I'm thinking of the shaping of information technology, and Dr. Phillips referred to the importance of information technology, but not just shaping it for COVID-19. We need to be fit for purpose for this changing world. Strengthening of risk communication, and again, Dr. Phillips would have spoken about the issues with risk communication in Barbados. Just imagine that multiplied by 26 for the CARFA member states. Of course, the supporting of the strengthening of health information systems, because without proper surveillance and accurate and timely reporting, we won't know what's going on. And of course, I can't be here representing CARFA and not want this relationship to further strengthen CARFA and make it fit for purpose. So a little bit into information technology systems. Dr. Phillips would have focused on contact tracing, but I want to look at the wider issues. This whole issue of adapting the healthcare industry to allow safety during this pandemic period, but also to ensure that the patient has the best interaction. What we have found during COVID-19 at CARFA is that we've had an infodemic. All kinds of fake information, all kinds of misinformation, and a lot of malicious information, rumor mongering. And so CARFA has tried to have a regional approach. We have focal points in each of our member states, and we call that the Regional Health Communications Network, a powerful tool. It has allowed us to standardize the message, make sure that there is clarity, no matter what the language, because our messages have been translated not only into different languages, but dialects as well. And we're even working with the deaf and blind community to try to see how we can tailor our messages and have the furthest reach. So we see a role here for the support. And we're not only doing the communication, but we're checking through knowledge, attitudes, and practice studies for monitoring and evaluation. And then, of course, here we are with disease surveillance. It is not only important to test persons, but it's important to track in your community to make sure that something isn't happening that you're not aware. So the support to the strengthening of the surveillance systems would be most. What we're aiming for is overall resilience in the health sector. Secretary General rightly pointed out the issues of climate change. Right now, we're in the hurricane season, and we are having some very strange weather. There's also the issue of social protection, ensuring the provision of social and financial protection. So even though we're having constrained economies, we can still ensure that our citizens and visitors are safe. The collaboration between sectors has been critical to allowing the CARICOM region to survive the COVID-19 pandemic thus far. And we would want that to continue. And of course, I've spoken about the importance of training. So all of this, we hope, will ensure that CARFA is empowered to support the region maximally as the Republic of Korea's assistance makes it fit for purpose, not just in COVID-19 times, but in the new world that is being created. So I really want to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for supporting CARFA, for supporting CARICOM in this really, really stressful and challenging times. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you for your nice presentation. She focused the 5 areas for the support. One is FPTP, Field Epidemiology and Laboratory Training Program. Second is Biosafety Level 3 laboratory for the detection and the management of the virus. Third point is the PCR laboratory machines prepare for the extraction of the RNA or DNA in the laboratory for preparing the DNA or RNA. You need to some special technology and laboratory facilities. Fourth point is teachers training program for the soft powers, and last is some the ITC technology for the combat the COVID-19. I think this point will be discussed the next speaker. Next speaker is Mr. Hwang Kyung-tae, Director General for Latin America and Caribbean Affairs, MOPA. Please, your time to the presentation.
Good morning. I will be speaking about Korea-Caribbean cooperation and post-Corona era cooperation. My name is Hwang Kyung-tae, Director General for the Latin American and Caribbean Affairs. I've been in charge of cooperative diplomacy for COVID-19 between the South Korean government and Latin America and the Caribbean regions. The Caribbean region has been our friendly regions for Korea, and I will be speaking about the current status of our response and any other practical cooperation projects that the Korean government is reviewing with regard to the Caribbean region. First of all, thanks to because of the quarantine measures of each country all over the world, the private sector exchange and cooperation has been slow, and this has been a huge implication to the Caribbean economy, which is heavily dependent on tourism and trade. So before that, I would like to mention some response measures of South Korea. We had the first confirmed case on January 20th of 2020, and ever since we have been seeing more than 100 confirmed cases every day, but the Korean government has set a priorities, which is openness, transparency, and democracy. So under those principles, we have made a pan-government effort to establish a system of testing and tracing and treating. And we also utilize mobile ICT technologies to stop the spread of the regions and communities. And also recently in Seoul and surrounding areas, we are still seeing more or less of 100 confirmed cases, which means that we still have to remain alert. So we are responding to this crisis with willingness and capacity that we will overcome this COVID-19 while minimizing the economic implications. So this is a video clip from the Korean government.
There was a demand from the public and the media that we should also close our doors. And it was difficult to argue against that and keep our borders open while also keeping our society open. We built up this example. The three T's, the testing, tracing, and the treatment are just the very basics of any disease control. Crisis response can be successful only if you are faithful to the fundamental values of your country. And those fundamental values of our very vibrant democracy is exactly openness, transparency, and full government accountability.
Thanks to the cooperation, we could overcome the COVID-19. We have been successfully overcoming the COVID-19. And the cooperation, I think, is the strongest weapon that we could have against COVID-19.
We've been getting countless requests for sharing our experience, for our test kits, for our masks, for our PPEs. I think we all know now COVID-19 is here for the long term. We have to live with the risk and manage the risk while ensuring and enabling the people to move about and respecting their fundamental human rights.
Thank you. So the Korean government has emphasized the soul of solidarity and cooperation. We have provided with medical devices and PPEs with countries who are in need of help. We have been providing testing kits and quarantine masks and hand sanitizers and protective outfits and shoes as well. And in May of this year, we have established International Cooperation Task Force. So we will continue to share our response experiences and our information with the international society by holding a regular web seminars and other events as well. And now I would like to briefly introduce the Korean version of New Deal. In order to overcome this crisis and to be prepared for the post-COVID-19 era, we have decided to proceed with a Korean version of New Deal, which is based on Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and strengthening the safety net. So, first of all, the Korean version of New Deal comprehensive plan, which was confirmed and announced by the Korean government, aims at proceeding with Digital New Deal and Green New Deal and also strengthening the safety net. And by doing so, we will increase investment in each sector and also create new jobs as well. Digital New Deal means that we will be utilizing the ICT technology that South Korea is spearheading the entire world, and also Green New Deal means that we will be accelerating our transformation from from the past towards a more eco-friendly and low-carbon green economy, and also strengthening the safety net means that we will be reducing the income gap and also provide support for those who have lost jobs. And more details are like this. So, with the Digital New Deal policy, we will be accelerating the transition of our economic format towards digital form. So we will strengthening the DNA ecosystem, and we will also make education infrastructure digital, and also we will foster non-face-to-face businesses, and also we will be focusing on SOC digitalization as well. And Green New Deal, on the Green New Deal front, it has been really important that we have to shift towards low carbon society to respond to climate change. So we will continue to support related businesses. And also this year in September, we have provided a humanitarian support to the CARICOM by providing $1 million to procure preventive equipment. Through the embassies of Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica and others as well, we also have provided preventive equipment to those countries as well. And in mid and long term, given the needs of different Caribbean countries, we will be very active in catering to those needs for development cooperation. When it comes to the relationship between the Korean government and the Caribbean countries, we have been cooperating since 1962 when we made a diplomatic relationship with Jamaica. So by 1987, we have also made a diplomatic relationship with Belize and other 14 member countries of CARICOM as well. So with those countries, we have been cooperating together with regard to bilateral diplomacy and multilateral diplomacies as well. For the past 3 years, 5 Korean embassies in those countries have been working hard to provide equipment such as computer related equipment to 8 member countries, and also we have been conducting capacity building businesses as well in the medical or public health area. And in 2006, we have established a Korea CARICOM dialogue consultative body, and it has been utilized as a forum for political communication at a high level. And in February, back in 2017, the third Korea CARICOM high-level meeting was held in Jamaica, and we announced a joint declaration between Korea and CARICOM. And this has reflected a public support towards Korean government's policies for the Korean Peninsula. And also, through these mechanisms, we have been cooperating together in many areas such as trade, transportation, health, education, and e-government as well. Especially in 2014, Korea participated in a project to provide financial support to create maps, which was called Great Caribbean Map. And also in 2016, the 7th ACS Summit was held in Cuba, where Korean foreign minister participated as well. So after that, as a follow-up measures, the South Korean government through the KUICA has provided $4 million of support. And we have been working together with major 8 member countries as well. And let me give you some details about our major cooperative businesses. First of all, next year, in the field of public health, through the Korea CARICOM Cooperation Fund, we will continue to cooperate with those Caribbean countries. If you look at the map, we will be communicating with member countries and Korean embassies in those local regions and CARICOM Secretariat as well to develop more projects for further cooperation. And also, we will prepare business plans that include areas, periods, and expected effects of those businesses. And at the same time, we will enable key expert institutions and related companies to be able to part of this effort as business implementers. And by using their expertise, I think we will be able to contribute to accelerating the economic development in the Caribbean region. So by doing so, we will make sure that all of those benefits will go back to the citizens. And this result will be shared by all member countries through the CARICOM Secretariat. And next, about the Korean version of New Deal, we will be focusing on digital transformation, cybersecurity, data network, AI, which is also dubbed as DNA ecosystem establishment. Um, in addition to e-government and information system establishments in this fourth industrial revolution era, these are the good examples where these two regions, Korea and the Caribbean, can work together. So during the first part of next year, the American and Caribbean Affairs Division of the Korean Foreign Ministry is considering to hold a Korea Latin America Digital New Deal Forum to invite related personnel from the Caribbean region to further strengthen our digital economic cooperation. And next, with regard to the climate change, the Caribbean region is one of those countries who have been hit hard by the climate change. So that would be our priority for consideration, and the maritime resilience strengthening business with ACS will be concluded by 2021, and after that we will be also making effort to develop another cooperation project that could follow this maritime resilience project. On the peace and climate change front, we have been cooperating with other countries on an international stage like UN, and we will continue that effort as well. And this year, the businesses, some of those businesses have halted temporarily, but I hope that we could continue our cooperation in the future, inviting more experts from the
Korean
region.
situation of the COVID-19 and Korean public health measurement for the defeat the COVID-19, and also the New Deal plan for Digital New Deal and the Green New Deal. She are talking about the history of the Korea to the ACS and the CARICOM. And then here point out the specific point, the cooperation area and the formation of the partnership. Now we are go to the floor. If you have any questions and comment to this presentation, floor is open. Before the preparing the floor, I'm talking about some key message of this forum. One message is, as you know, the natural history of the virus. This is the base for the public measures. Virus shedding is 2.5 days prior to the onset of symptom. Virus shedding before the symptom, and then virus shedding continued 7 days after the onset of symptom. This is a natural history. By this, the characteristic of virus, we try to develop the contact tracing and isolation and the early detection testing. The infectivity period is 5.8 days. First case reported, second case is 5.8 days later. How do you shortening this interval, infectious the period? First is early detection and quarantine and testing. It is main theme of our the public health measures. Second point is the behavior change of the people, the masking, wearing mask and hand washing, and the cupping etiquette. This is very important tool. Another tools. How people do this behavior change? It is the very important point. So we need to communicate and intervene the public to change and maintenance of behavior, prevent the spread of virus. Change the behavior is an important point. Last point is public measures, like the restriction and discouraging the gathering in the small business and the sports events and the theater, school closure and working place closure is another the strategy to reduce the virus spread. Those methods are very painful and cost shared the methodology. Sometimes lockdown, shutdown. Korea did not implement the lockdown, shutdown the whole country, but partially we are restriction and mobility. How do we balance this kind of the discouraged gathering and the encourage economy? That is a key point in Korea. How do you balance our public measures and economic? Our experience, we share the knowledge and the technology experience with the Caribbean area. One is the training program for the epidemiologist and the laboratory. Second is the capacity building of the diagnosis, biosafety level 3 laboratory and machine. And second is this kind of administrative experience for the implementation of the social distance and change of behavior. Lastly, we have implemented the social determinant of health. A very important point. We apply the prepaid leave program in the temporary, but we have the national insurance system. This system is very important to prevent the weak people and the elderly people, to prevent the COVID-19 and prevent the poor. It is the very important last point. Maybe our experience share your countries and our experience some game change the control of the COVID-19. Do you have any question and the comment?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Very good morning to Korea. Good evening to the viewers and the participants from the Caribbean. Regarding the thank you for the presentation. And regarding the Korea Caribbean cooperation in public health sector, as an ambassador of Korea to Trinidad and Tobago and accredited to St. Vincent Grenadines, St. Lucia, Barbados, and Grenada, let me share my own experience and observation of how Caribbean nations are coping with this pandemic. Like many other countries in the world, the Caribbean nations are surely facing the hard choice between saving lives and upholding the livelihood, for example, economy. So when it comes to the fight against COVID-19, Caribbean nations achieved a relative success to some extent at the expense of their economic activities. So let me focus on the outcomes of the handling of the COVID-19 in the Caribbean region could be explained into the three dimensions. The locally, each country, which is mainly with the Ministry of Health and the Chief Medical Officer, spearheading the response in a timely manner by introducing the protocol for preventing and mitigating the pandemics. So such protocols of the wearing mask, keeping physical distance, social distance, and sanitization. That is the main message delivered by the government. So can you imagine that wearing a mask in public place under this climate of the temperature of the 30-35 degrees is not an easy job. But I noticed there is a good level of the compliance from the public down the street, and also there is a good deal of their trust from the public to the government measures and the public health system. So based on this, the environment and the measures and the trust, I think that the government is continuing to carrying out the policy of testing, contact tracing, and treatment for the patients. The second, in the regional level, I have to tout the leadership and technical assistance support provided by the CAPA, Caribbean Public Health Agencies. As Dr. John has mentioned in the previous presentation, it was the CAPA that provides the testing or the training for the testing step from the initial stage when the virus is very new to this region. So it was very essential for the Caribbean states to be provided by such the valuable the expertise and the training from CAPA. And lastly, on the global stage, the Caribbean states, Caribbean nations also pay heed to the guidelines issued by the WHO and the CDC of the US. And so recently, so the Caribbean nations as a whole joined in the global COVAX facility as an alternative, as a choice of the pursuing the vaccines. So overall, the functional cooperation among and between the Caribbean nations make COVID-19 response even more effective. So taking this opportunity, let me suggest some areas of the cooperation in the areas of the public health or the medical sector. Some of them is just the reiteration and the emphasis, which is delivered by the previous speakers. But let me say and let me emphasize again of this importance of the cooperation between Korea and the Caribbean nations in this field. Firstly, I have to admit that there is a lack of the infrastructure in the hospitals and the public health system, even though they have the good policy and the good the protocols for the tracking and the handling of the COVID-19. So the nations in the Caribbean states have to import most of the materials and equipment, such as the PPE and even the ventilators. They have to import such materials. So provision of such items is very useful for the Caribbean states. Secondly, I have also to the emphasis of the cooperation in the medical sector. You know, the Korea is one of the best in public health system and medical system with innovative and high-tech facility and techniques. So it is worthwhile to share Korea's knowledge and the technical support with the Caribbean states in safeguarding in safeguarding the public health system and also the preventing disease in the Caribbean states. So one of the exemplary initiative could be the joint medical research between Korea and the Caribbean nations. So Caribbean has also very solid research background with its academia facilities, University of West Indies and St. George University in Grenada. So I think it is a good initiative as starting point to formulate about the joint the medical research between Korea and the Caribbean nations. Thirdly, let me suggest one of the idea as one of the idea of the scholarship. You know that now there are about 50 Korean students are studying in St. George University in Grenada. The St. George University Medical School in Grenada, there are 50 Korean students are studying, whether they are undergraduate and graduate students, schools. So on the other side, so I think it is good to invite some of the students from Caribbean states, Caribbean nations, to Korea. So maybe by using of the Korean government scholarship program, with the expansion of that area of the school to the medical school. So I think there are some the students from the Caribbean region to study in Korea, to study medical school in Korea. I think it is good for the long-term cooperation between two countries. So yeah, so there is the small suggestion for the cooperation in the field of the public health and medical sector. And lastly, I know that the Caribbean region is one of the first region in the world to eradicate the communicable disease such as the measles in the past. So I think that I hope that the Caribbean region again to be the first region in the world to eradicate this pandemic of COVID-19, especially with the cooperation of Korea. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the Ambassador Long. She suggests and the comment our presentation. Now, yes, maybe. Do you have any question for the cooperation with the Caribbean countries?
No, I've got no question. But from the perspective of our hospital, cooperation opportunity with the Caribbean states, as mentioned earlier during previous presentations, it is very important to focus on human resources. So at our hospitals, from our perspective, I think we will be part of that effort. Since 2014, many doctors from other countries came to our hospital and got training, and the number is about 500, and most of them are from developing countries. So when they go back to their countries, I believe they will be a great help for their own countries in developing their own public health preventive systems and measures.
Thank you for your time. Now we are closing this session. Is all the speakers and the presentation, the doctors and administrative directors. Thank you for all and sharing the time and experience at this forum. Thank you very much.
네, 제1세션 진행해 주신 이종구 대사님과 또 먼 거리에도 불구하고 온라인을 통해 다양한 정보를 나눠주신 카리브 지역의 연사님들께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. Thank you so much for your presentation and active discussion. And I'd like to give special thanks to all the presenters for sharing your insightful ideas through online from the Caribbean countries. 네, 이상으로 제1세션을 마치고 잠시 휴식 시간을 가진 뒤 두 번째 세션을 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 로비에 커피와 다과가 마련되어 있습니다. 편하게 즐기시고 10시 10분에 뵙겠습니다. This concludes the first session. We'll have short break and start the second session shortly at 10:10. The second session will start soon, so please enjoy your coffee and refreshment at the lobby, and we will meet you again at 10:10. Thank you.
내려온다 장님 깊은 골로 대한 짐승이 내렸다 몸은 헐숭덜숭 꼬리는 잔뜩 핫팔이 넘고 해머리 흔들며 전동 같은 앞다리 봉화 같은 뒷발로 양기 찌어지고 새낙 같은 발톱으로 잔디뿌리 왕모래를 촤르르르르 그치며 주홍잎떡 벌리고 허리랑 하는 소리 하나리 묻어지고 땅이 툭 꺼진 한듯 차례 정신없이 목으로 움츠리고 가만히 엎젖었다 멍 내려온다 봄이 내려온다 송이 깊은 골로 한진생이 내려온다 누의 머리를 흔들며 양귀 쭉 찢어지고 몸은 얼숭덜숭 꼬리는 잔뜩 봄 내려온다 봄이 내려온다 송이 깊은 골로 한진생이 내려온다 누의 머리를 흔들며 양귀 쭉 찢어지고 몸은 얼숭덜숭 꼬리는 잔뜩 봄 내려온다 봄이 내려온다 봄 내려온다 봄이 내려온다
This place has in some way become a part of you. And when you share it with the world, it becomes just a little bit bigger. We are creators, artists, bloggers, teachers, students, and learners. But we are a part of this city. Yet it lives and breathes a life of its own. A mix between the new and the old, the fast and the slow, nature and technology. And we've all been a part of this journey. There's something about this city that stands out among the rest. And that's us. We create it, and we share it, and we tell it to the world. There's nothing like this place, one of a kind, a city all to its own, a vibrant, dynamic place, always changing, and it needs a voice. And that voice comes from us. I Soul You is much more than a misunderstood slogan. We are free to interpret this city. This city needs us as much as we need it to live. It pushes and it pulls, taking this way and that way, around corners and down alleyways. in the middle of a busy street, in the quiet of garden palaces, and there's so much history here, and it's a history that no nation can ever wipe away. Because it's young, it still has room to grow. Say what you want about it, this is Seoul. We are the ones who live here. We share the same air, and we walk the same streets. And here, we share the same stories. Share your voice with the world. Tell them what you've seen here, and how you felt, and what you heard, and what you've experienced. Let's let the people know. I salute you, global soulmates. Don't stop sharing. And together, we'll make this place just a little bit bigger.
말리 장성 싸듯 사냥 싸움에 마초 싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부두치 잡는 모양 영문 출사 도적 잡듯 토끼 두 귀를 꽉 잡고 하나 둘 금금모질이 술령수 일치인의 나라 토끼를 헤워쌀지 진왕 말리 장성 싸듯 사냥 싸움에 마초 싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부두치 잡는 모양 영문 출사 도적 잡듯 토끼 두 귀를 꽉 잡고
하나 둘 금금모조리 술령수 일시인의 나라 토끼를 헤워쌀지 진왕 말리 장성 싸듯 사냥 싸움에 마초 싸듯 겹겹이 둘러싸고 토끼 부딪혀 잡는 모양 영문 출사 도적 잡듯 토끼 두 귀를 꽉 잡고
개 같으면 더욱 좋다 삼복 다르면 너를 잡어 약계장도 좋거니와 네 간을 내어 오개탕 다려먹고 네가 죽을 벗겨내어 찰량 모서 깔게 되면 어열내종 혈담에는 만병의 추네 만병의 추네
만병의 추네
명약이라 아이고 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 뭐냐 그러느니라 그것이 우리 수궁 남여라고 하는 것이다
개구리까지 영을 듣고 어전에 입시하여 대왕릉에 절은 승상거 승진은 도미 한섬이나 추석 오징어 할 박대대사 성두봉 방첨사족의 해운군마 평산청어 군수 해구 현가몽어 조부장 조기 부별나 지상대 승대 정다리가 우리 좌구나졸 금금모조리 상어솔 치두치 주치멸 삼치 가재 개구리까지 영을 듣고 어전에 입시하여 대왕릉에 절은
Hello, my name is Steve McCurry. I'm here in Seoul, the capital of Korea. For me, Seoul is a really interesting city. There are a number of historic cities around the world, but Seoul is much more than its history. It's a modern metropolis that is growing and advancing, and I'm really excited about the pictures I'll be taking here. Seoul has more than 2,000 years of history, but it's also looking towards its future. While biking or walking around the city, you can really feel a sense of coexistence. The coexistence between the past and the future, and the coexistence between the people.
This is an amazing place, isn't it? It's sort of like
so beautiful.
Can you believe this place in the middle of the city? It's just unbelievable.
I didn't expect it. Actually, like the city and this palace.
Yeah.
I feel like a time traveler.
Yeah.
If you want to see and feel the passion of Seoul, you can find it everywhere. The transformation is incredible. This extraordinary regeneration only comes from passionate town planning. You can really feel the energy of the city in the faces of its people. The people of Seoul are passionate about their city, and the city is passionate about its people. And you can really feel this enthusiasm around you. Seoul seems to know exactly what's important for its people.
This is a great park. I love this sign.
네, 편히 쉬었습니까? 그럼 지금부터 포스트 코로나 식량 안보 협력이란 주제로 진행되는 두 번째 세션 시작하도록 하겠습니다. Welcome back, honorable guests. I hope you enjoy your coffee break. We have now begun the second session of the 10th High-Level Forum on the Korea and Caribbean Partnership. The topic for this session will be on the era of post-COVID-19 and food security. 네, 이번 세션은 서울대 국제대학원의 김태균 부원장님께서 주재하시고 한국 측 발표자로 권태균 농촌진흥청 기술협력국장님, 한도연 한국학중앙연구원 교수님께서 발제해 주겠습니다. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Taegyun Kim, who is professor of Seoul National University, and our presenters, Dr. Taegyun Kwon, Director General for Technology Cooperation Bureau Rural Development Administration, and Dr. Do-yeon Han, Professor of Academy of Korean Studies. Please welcome them with a big round of applause. 네, 세 분 앞으로 모시겠습니다. 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Okay, so welcome back, and then now we have the second session. Already we announced like the era of post-COVID-19 and food security. So my name is Taegyun Kim. I'm now the teaching at Seoul National University, especially international development and cooperation as well. So today, I think we can celebrate the 10th High-Level Forum in the Korea-Caribbean Partnership. And also, I'm so honored to moderate this second session. So before we start the presentations, I will introduce very briefly each different paper as well as the presenter. So first presentation will be conducted by Mr. Peter Thompson, Chief of Executive Officer, Rural Agriculture Development Authority, RADA, in Jamaica. So he will present Jamaica's agricultural response to COVID-19 and future challenges on food security. So basically, he will talk about some now situation, especially COVID-19 and its impact on the agricultural sector in Jamaica case. And second paper will be presented by Dr. Kwon Taek-yoon, the Director General for Technology Cooperation Bureau, Rural Development Administration, the RDA in South Korea. His topic is the RDA's International Cooperation Program in Agriculture Technology, especially with a particular focus on our work with the Latin America and Caribbean. So basically, he will touch on some of the cooperation and or the future plan to collaborate with the South Korea and also the Caribbean states. And finally, the food security and Korea-Caribbean cooperation, Dr. Han Do-hyun, he's now Professor Academy of Korean Studies in South Korea. He's one of the top-notch scholars in Korea, especially the agricultural development, and then what is the social impact of the agriculture sector. So he will talk about some of the possible scenario of collaboration between two actors. So this current situation, COVID-19, is not the end of the story. Also the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres already gave warning to international community. The COVID-19 pandemic could push nearly 50 billion more people into extreme poverty. So health security, like the COVID-19, is kind of crisis leads to another crisis, so-called the food security. So that's why today's topic is very important, critical, and very timely. How we can get out of this kind of situations, food security, and how to protect the food supply, especially in the Caribbean region. So I think the negative impacts of food crisis can be avoided if countries, especially South Korea and Caribbean states, act immediately to enhance global food security. So we can just share how to get out of, avoid this kind of situation by the presentations, three papers and speakers, especially their wisdom. Right, so without further ado, I will invite the first speaker, Mr. Peter Thompson, are you there? Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you can have the 15 minutes, or you can use the another 5 minutes to maximum 20 minutes for your presentation. So now you have flow.
All right, good afternoon to my friends over there in Seoul. And of course, to my Caribbean friends, good evening. I will be presenting to you Ghana and our response to COVID. Just a brief overview before I speak on our response to COVID. Jamaica is approximately 18 degrees north of the equator. Population is 2.93 million. 10,992 square kilometers, and our major language is English. For males, 73 years, and for females, 78 years. Our currency of Jamaican dollars. The principal drivers in the Jamaican economy are tourism, manufacturing, agribusiness, bauxite, alumina, business process outsourcing, and energy. Jamaica's gross domestic product by sector, agriculture, is 70% of the GDP, industry 21%, and services 72%. Jamaica's economy is dependent on services which account for 6% of GDP. Most of the country's foreign exchange is derived from remittances, tourism, and mining.
I think that we have technical problems, so the connection is not that good though. Mr. Thompson, can you hear me? Oh, I don't think so. So in that case, so Secretariat, could you ask him to present, I think, last chance, like the third speaker, as third speaker, and then I'm going to move on the second paper immediately. All right, okay. So, all right, so sorry about this, but we can continue. Very, the exciting the presentation. That will be second paper. So, I will invite Mr. Kwon Taek-yoon, for the second paper. All right, so you have it, floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Buenos dias, señorita and señorita, at least.
I just wanted to say hi in Spanish. I was asked to conduct my presentation in Korean, so I will be speaking in Korean from now. My name is Kwon Taek-yoon, the Chief of Technology Cooperation Bureau of RDA, which means Rural Development Administration. So I would like to speak about what change the agriculture has brought about in the Korean society, and also the achievements related to international cooperation, in particular our achievements from the Latin American regions as well, and my suggestions for future cooperation between two regions and what we have to take into account. As you can see from the screen, Korea has witnessed a very dynamic transformation and changes. Could you make the screen bigger? This is where I work. There are 4 national institutes, and we have 1,190 scientists and 2,000 or 3,000 more research assistants and research fellows, and this is one of the central government agencies. And among science and technology areas, we are working on not just innovation of agriculture, but also working on the network, a nationwide network among agricultural personnel. And we are working with universities and the academia and related institutions all over the country as well. So far, these show the experiences that we have seen. So, this is kind of a revolutions in science and technology determine agriculture of tomorrow. That's a kind of a slogan that the Rural Development Agency is putting forward. 1980s and 1990s, consumers in Korea wanted to get fresh vegetables and agricultural products all year round. So we developed new technologies and scientific technologies to make it possible. So now it is available all year round. So at the same time, we also worked on elevating the levels of qualities of those products to cater to the needs of the market. So far, these are major achievements that we have made recently. From Colombia, we have participated in establishing the first soil monitoring system based on ICT, and we got a letter of appreciation from the Colombian colleagues for our participation. In Korea, we also used the ICT technology in the agricultural area to collect information related to conducting agricultural activities. So we applied our experiences to the case of Colombia, which is a very encouraging case because this is not just a science and technology aspect, but also an aspect of the entire agricultural area. And we are also spearheading the pan-Asian effort in this sector, which we find very proud of. And we are also making long-term investment in these new varieties. So our agency have worked on a total of 4,800 new types. First of all, the peppers, actually they are coming from South American regions. It's South Korean people make kimchi every year. We have made a lot of research and development efforts. So now we are able to eat kimchi whenever we want. Now it is not a food that we sick, when we are hungry, but a food that we always want to taste. And there are very detailed categories under kimchi, and we have been making a long-term and big-scale investment in developing new varieties of kimchi. So based on this type of experience, we could share our experiences with other countries as well as part of our cooperation efforts. And recently, digitalization is also happening very rapidly in the agricultural sector as well. So in this sector, we use machines to reduce the necessary labor force. So most part of the labor force, or most of the work that used to be done by human resources is now being done by machines. So since 1980s and 1990s, we've been applying ICT in this sector, which is called smart farms. So for example, a woman here is controlling this massive field by herself by just giving orders to this machine. So we say that in the future, the whole agricultural sector will be digitalized, and also big data and AI are becoming more important as well. Based on these experiences, the agency has been working with multiple countries in the world, and we are sharing our technologies and information that we have and knowledge with especially African countries and also Latin American countries as well by carrying out certain initiatives. In the Latin American region, we have a Korean Latin American agricultural cooperation initiative, and 13 countries are participating in that initiative to find out more ways to digitalize the agricultural sector. And we've been working on this for the past decade, and we have made massive and major achievements. So I think we have to take note of these experience as well. As we are trying to cooperate with Latin American countries, the agriculture sector is really important, but there are still many points that we are missing. In Korea, for the past 50 years, Korea has made a massive investment in advancing the agricultural sector. So South Korea came in the second in that effort. We have doctors here with us today. We need to eat well to strengthening our immune systems. So to that effect, we need safe and healthy eating habits, which would be enabled by developing a fresh and innovative agriculture products. We dispatch experts with more than 3 decades of experiences to Latin American countries to develop new products in that region. So they are now working in 5 different countries among the member countries, and one of them is Ecuador. And a total of 13 member countries are now working together to find out any problems, any challenges that we are facing, and they are also working on the development of new technologies as well. So from 13 member countries and 18 research institutions, and they are now working with us. These are bilateral cooperation systems. It includes Dominican Republic. And I've also witnessed that Korean ambassadors have visited Dominican Republic as well. We also have Republic of Nicaragua, Republic of Ecuador, and other countries as well. So with these countries, we are working on R&D with the support from scientists who have relevant experiences. So we are trying to combine South Korea's technologies and experiences with those of scientists from these countries. These are the key achievements. To name just a few, I want to point out that we have been really successful in the case of seed potatoes. So the amount of production of seed potatoes in Ecuador went up dramatically from 12 tons per hectare to 20 tons per hectare. And seed potato is one of the most successful agriculture products in Korea. And also rice, we are producing very nice, good tasting rice as well. And it accounts for about 20% of the entire agricultural produce in South Korea, which is amazing. I met ministers. I met the agriculture minister a few years ago, and he also agreed that the level of self-sufficiency in our country was 70%, around 70%. And he has committed that he will try to upgrade the level of food self-sufficiency for a total of 4,500 households in rural areas. We are getting a lot of support from our partner countries as well. This is a case of Paraguay. For the past 10 years, we have been planting these seeds, and these are being planted in an area of 6,300 square hectares, and it is also contributing to increasing the income of agricultural households in that region. The next thing that I want to talk about is an initiative, Korea Latin America Food and Agricultural Cooperation Initiative. In the agricultural sector, what is the most important element is the soil. We need to know really well about the characteristics and the nature of the soil, and we have to make related data available. And including that, we have been conducting several different projects. In South Korea, we have been producing rice for more than 3,500 years. So that means that we've got a massive amount of related data and information and successful practices and experiences as well. And especially the productivity of rice is contributing to enhancing the nation's productivity in the entire agricultural sector. What is also important is that you should be able to well manage the products after harvest. So we call it post-harvest training. Capacity building is also very important. And again, soil. I want to emphasize the importance of soil. So we used to get help related to using soil related to data from other countries, but now we are able to provide assistance to other countries. This is a plan called Kolfachi. One of them is about freehold. 60% of all agricultural products that are being generated in the Latin American region is freehold varieties. So this program is aiming at further expanding the scope and the amount of the production, especially for small-sized households in the rural areas. It is very important to increase the productivity of coffee production as well. So this program is also aiming at helping those coffee producers or coffee cultivators to increase the productivity of that production. So now it is a time for us to learn about the status and the experiences of Latin American countries and the Caribbean countries as well. So first of all, we need to find out what are the most urgent issues that we have to deal with. And to do that, I think our agency, the Rural Development Agency, is at the forefront of that effort on the Korean side. If we could be any help, I think we will be a very active participants in that effort so that both of us could become happier. So we are ready and we are open to any type of suggestions for future cooperation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed, General Director Mr. Kwon. So he just presented the historical evolution of South Korean policies in food production and food security. And also he highlighted the food security and food production strategies as kind of the key engine of South Korea condensed economic growth 1970s, 1980s. And also he continued to present and what kind of the cooperation project, development cooperation have been conducted by South Korean government into the Latin America. So probably they have time to talk about the more focus on Caribbean states, not the Latin America in general. So today's topic is Caribbean, the region, and it's the collaboration with South Korea. Right, so thank you again. And then if you have the questions, so during the presentation, you can make a memo and then you can toss your memo to our staff members. So I will collect all the questions after in the 3 presentations and then we can just make the Q&A session. Okay, so without further ado, I will invite the third paper, actually second paper, Professor Han Do-hyun. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for your generous introduction. It's my great honor to speak at this important and prestigious conference. I learned a lot from Dr. Kwon about his presentation on Korean Rural Development Administration. Korea is kind of very proud of his institution. Without his institution, Korea would have still the problem of food security. It doesn't work. Yeah. I think yesterday we had a very big news about vaccine against the coronavirus. But we have had a vaccine already quite a long time. The Nobel Peace Prize 2020 says food is the best vaccine against this coronavirus. In Korea, we have kind of ancient saying, food is the best medicine. You have to eat rice every day. The rice is your energy. In Korean, 밥심. So 밥심, the power of rice. You have two pictures in 1998 in the Asian financial crisis. One picture is about food riots because they didn't have food security. If you don't have food security, you have food riots. In Indonesia, it's quite notorious. And below, you have another picture from South Korea in 1998, gold donation drive. They didn't have any responsibility for the financial crisis. The government and the companies made a mistake, but ordinary housewives stood up to save the nation. They brought their own goals to save the country. It's kind of a patriotic movement because they had food security, I think. In the academia, in policy making, we have different vocabularies. One is food security, the other is food sovereignty. Generally speaking, they would be similar, but food security has a longer history in terms of academic history. Food sovereignty is relatively recent. Food security emphasizes supply side in total. If we have enough food from the import, it would be okay. That's the perspective of food security. But for food sovereignty is different. As you know, America exports a lot of food, rice, wheat, but even in America, they have very serious problem of food desert, especially in inner cities for colored people. That's why we have a new word, food sovereignty. I think this word came from Central and Latin America. What is it? Via Campesina. Korea had a, how can I say, very vivid experience of overcoming the food problems, as Dr. Kwon explained in detail. Again, Korea is very thankful for his administration, his agency. It's really excellent. I think Korea is one of the few countries in the world to have extension service, excellent extension service to the town level. They are well-paid government officials. When I meet them, they are always proud of their jobs. And Korea had a long walk to food security. Korea was a dominantly agricultural country, agricultural nation, but it had a very severe food shortage. Every spring, we had a food shortage. So my parents went to the mountain to gather some herbs or something from the trees. It's a very serious problem. Every policymakers or legislators, if they want to run for voting, and they say, I will solve this problem like that. The food shortage was solved by 1970s. Before that, Korea had a very serious problem. So the most important measure was land reform in 1949 and 1950. I think Japan and Korea, Taiwan have very good policy, land to the tiller. In the textbook or UN, always they talk about land to the tiller. But in terms of implementation, Japan, Taiwan, Korea are the best examples. So, like Professor Kim, if he wants to be minister or president, he cannot own farmland. If you read Korean newspapers for congressional hearing, always they investigate whether this person has farmland. So only farmers may have farmland. This is a very strict policy for the last 50 years. Sorry. Also in 1961, the government worked hard to eradicate the rural debt for small farmers. And I think Dr. Kwon already explained how Korea fought against the food problems. And we developed agricultural cooperatives and credit unions, especially at the village level. We had a credit union. We called it Kumgo, Village Fund. And also the government established many factories for fertilizers and pesticides. And also they developed many income increasing projects. It was quite successful in 1960s already. And then in 1970s, the famous movement, the rural village movement, 새마을 운동. It works so slowly. So Korea relied on food import and also American aid quite a long time. But 1960s, 1970s, the Korean government and also with his agency worked hard to have new varieties for higher yield, increase of rice production, and also we emphasized the consumption of barley and flour. Usually Koreans like rice. So in North Korea, still they have slogan, rice for the nation. So food security achieved. I think you had already the explanation from Dr. Kwon, Green Revolution, White Revolution, also excellent establishment of institutions, irrigation, factories of fertilizers, and also various cash crops. The greenhouse, White Revolution is the key to the various cash crops. And meat, cows, pigs, poultry. These are very popular industry in rural Korea now, since 1970s. In 1986 and then 1995, the food system has been changed in Korea. So, including America, many governments and the world organizations forced Korea to open the domestic market. This is quite disaster for Korean farmers. Korean farmers are very poor, how can I say, in terms of farming size, it's quite small. It cannot compete against big farmers, America or England or Argentina, Australia. So the issue of food security and the food sovereignty, the issue came to Korea as an urgent issue. So Korean civil organizations and the farmers try to find some solutions against this global food system. If we compete in the liberal market, Korean farmers cannot survive. So we started a new way, so-called local food movement or organic food or urban-rural collaboration movement. This is a Korean invention, quite a Korean word, 생명운동, life movement. For a long time, Korean agriculture emphasized the production, but this movement emphasizes coexistence between human beings and nature. So we cannot exploit nature or soil just for our purpose. So we have to find some wisdom of coexistence, so-called life movement, expecting living things. The movement came from Korea's indigenous religion, Eastern learning against Western teaching. We call it Eastern learning in Korean Donghak and Cheondeogyo. They developed the idea of respecting things living, respecting others, respecting nature. It was invented in 1860, 150 years ago, but it revived in the 1970s. So the most important organization of that movement is 한-살림 Consumer Cooperatives. This is just the consumer cooperatives, but it had a very strong philosophical background. It became very powerful civil movement. So it started with the food movement, but now it's kind of a nationwide, very powerful civil movement. So this is a good soil for the movement of food sovereignty in Korea. 한-살림. This is the declaration of 한-살림. So they emphasize the solidarity between human and animal, between human and nature. I think you can find many excellent consumer cooperatives in Europe or in America, in Latin America, I think. But this credit cooperative or consumer cooperative is a little different in terms of its philosophy, its ecological turn, maybe. It started in 1986, but it became bigger and bigger. Now it has more than 600,000 households. So if you think one household maybe 4 family members, so it's quite a big organization compared to the Korean population. So it's quite successful consumer credit cooperatives. Because of this success, now in Korea we have many successful local food movement and local community development organizations. This is another example of successful local food movement. It's a new consumer cooperative, iCook. If you go in Seoul, you see many places at this new organization. It's a very young organization, but it's bigger than the first organization, 한-살림. It's a very big. Also, it's a kind of a global. So they support some organization in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia, and this is one example. They invested. They started a consumer cooperative, but they invested in small town. This place is a Gure County. It's a poor area. In the beginning, some companies wanted to invest in that area, but the company gave up this land because it's too remote. They cannot have enough human resources. So this small cooperative bought this land and they developed this area. So now is a town center of Gure County. It's quite successful. You see many shops and factories and guest houses and RPC. So this is one example of rural revitalization. A small consumer cooperative came to the rural area and they were successful in establishing factories and shops, guest house, cinema. That is one of the successful scenario in local food movement. This is another example, local food movement between civil organizations and the local government. It's kind of a private-public partnership, Wanju Local Food. This case is nationwide famous. Following this example, now in many local governments in Korea, they starting local food movement in terms of government level. So this is quite promising for local food or food sovereignty in Korea. I think including UN and other organizations emphasize food sovereignty nowadays instead of food security, because food security means supply in total, but food sovereignty emphasizes vulnerable groups and small farmers or urban poor. So we see P4P program of World Food Plan. It stopped. As Dr. Kwon explained, I think CARICOM has quite good number of farmers. Korea farmers around less than 5% of the population. Also, rural area is less than 10% of the area. So compared to Korea, still many countries in CARICOM has a good resource for rural development and the food sovereignty. In terms of that, we can find some ways for further collaboration. So Korea has experiences of food security first and then food sovereignty. It's strange. It works so slowly. When I read the website of CARICOM, I could not find any meaningful, significant local food movements in CARICOM area. But we have a very good resource, I think. So if we work together, we can find some available and good ways to exchange for food sovereignty, especially local food movements or organic food movements. That kind of movement for access to food for vulnerable people or local community, I think it would be a good way to overcome this coronavirus, I think. Thank you for your kind listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Han. So I think that he will explain like the Korean transformation from the food security to food sovereignty by mentioning some of the key examples, like including 한-카리브 and 한-카리브 and other social food local food movement as well as the social economies and solidarity. So it's quite informative, I think, presentation. So we can use his like the knowledge about the South Korean historical path for food sovereignty with the Caribbean, I think, situations. All right, so we have the actually the first speaker, but now is the last speaker, Mr. Peter Thompson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you
All
loud
right.
and clear.
It's very good news to you fix the problem. All right. So I mean, with the time limits, could you finish out your presentation within 15 minutes? So if you're ready, just go ahead.
Okay, I will just start from where I had stopped. I'm sorry for the disconnection. It was out of my reach. It's just a technological challenge. As I was saying that agriculture contributes in the last quarter 7.3% of GDP, and it employs 33% of the total labor force. The type of production that we do in Jamaica, we focus on legumes, vegetables, condiments, fruits, cereal, plantains, potatoes, yams, other tubers, and soil. And of course, you can see the data will substantiate the volume and acreage that we put. We have over 220,000 farmers registered in Jamaica, and of course, they are broken out by region, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide. Each region has its own number of farmers. RADA's main function, we work with farmers. We provide services in the form of farmer registration, agronomy, land husbandry, livestock production, plant health and food safety, pesticide management, post-harvest techniques, production and marketing, social services and home economics, on-farm irrigation, water management, training, technology transfer, technical information, agriculture engineering, agriculture business management, project management, and implementation. Our divisions of RADA, we have 4 divisions: corporate services, field services, technical services, strategic planning, performance, and project management. Field services focus more on the extension services and, of course, associated more with the farming community. We promote sustainable agriculture through farming, community mobilization, so we focus on education, linkages, and of course, ongoing farmer engagement through our programs. Since the inception of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have had significant challenges in agriculture in Jamaica. And as you look at the trend, you can see compared to the other Caribbean countries, we are still in the middle at the time when we started out. And of course, we notice similar trends across the region. And the pandemic has really impacted agriculture. Our COVID impact here, it affected our customer demand, supply chain disruption, delays in processing, especially government papers. The distribution channels were disrupted, and of course, it reduces the investors' demand to get into agriculture as a business. On the onset of COVID in March of this year, the farmers had excess production out there, which normally go into the hotel sector. When the hotel closed their doors in Jamaica, we have significant volume of produce out there. Similarly, the school system that usually absorbed a lot of the farmers' production were out of commission, and therefore we had excess produce at hand. The government's through RADA's intervention was to go back into the farming communities and purchase the excess produce from the farmers and redistribute to urban centers. So we actually bring the produce closer to consumers in urban centers. We also use our marketing services. So our marketing officers were very instrumental in organizing the farmers and for them to get out their produce at a central point where it could be picked up, transport to a center where the produce would have been graded, packaged, and to urban centers across Jamaica. We also engaged agro-processors to take off some of the excess produce for processing. So we see like condiments such as cayenne and peppers were used in the processing of pepper mash, and some of the more perishable products were used for making juices for the school feeding programs. The government, through RADA, used approximately $240 million to purchase excess production from the farmers. As you can see in the slide there, where farmers were assembling their products for transport to market. We also have farmers were assisted with inputs to get back into production, especially those that would have suffered extensive losses from fallout in market conditions as well as spoilage. The stakeholders came on board. They also assisted the farmers with fertilizers, seeds, and chemicals to support the agricultural sector. The challenge for agriculture is that we have to look at our efforts and re-strategize. So what we have done is to implement what is called the production incentive program, where we assisted farmers to get back into production, seeds, fertilizer, chemicals, and of course, capacity building. The program we have executed cost in excess of $466 million. So we target certain specific crops like cassava, cocoa, dasheen, Irish potato, yam, ginger, hot pepper, lime, onion, strawberries, vegetables, and we also focus on small ruminant production and to engage small holders who have backyard that can, produce vegetables and condiments as well as herbs and spices. One of the challenges that we faced was that we have to postpone a lot of our activities, field activities. So the slides indicate that we sent out advisories to our regional offices to cancel some of our activities like open days and training sessions and so forth when the COVID was being hiked, and we had to take some serious decisions to mitigate against the spread. Information dissemination, we use social media, text messaging, WhatsApp services, electronic advertisement, and of course, other means of getting information out to the farming community as to help to curtail the spread. We implemented programs to mitigate this, and the Ministry of Health recommendations and regulations. We have to abide by minimum group size of 15 or less. We have to ensure that we practice social distancing and sanitization of all materials and equipment that we use to conduct training. One of our flagship programs, the National Farm Road Program, which we execute since the last 5 years, were significantly curtailed. Our interest in that, we identify, select preparation of bill of quantities, procurement, payment, etc. All of those are significantly reduced as a result of COVID. The budget for the National Farm Road Program at the inception, at the onset of COVID, was 1.25 billion, and we had to reduce that significantly based on government requests to divert the funds to more needy areas. So we had to curtail our activity. As you can see in this slide, this is a road on the right that we have done. Compared to what usually obtains on the left, we have created impacts in the community by executing programs to benefit and assist farmers to increase production and to increase the farmers' livelihood. But the onset of COVID, all of those have reduced significantly. The current statistics for our country is that we have 9,573 cases of COVID. The recovery rate is what? It's very good, 4,987. But unfortunately, we have over 224 deaths, which we really should avoid at all costs. The challenges for food security and for areas of collaboration, we believe that technology-driven agriculture is somewhat an area that we need to focus on in order to increase our production and productivity. And of course, we need to have trainings and limit our contact with our clientele, which are our farmers, using more technology. We need to upgrade our IT infrastructure and communication so that we can have more reach and can communicate with more efficiency with our stakeholders. We believe that a drone unit for surveillance and data collection would limit the officers risking themselves being contaminated out there by mixing with farmers out there in the community. And of course, one of the challenges that we have also is the whole issue of mobility of extension staff. I think we could collaborate with our partners and that to get low-cost ideal vehicles for them to carry their duties on a more sustainable basis. Other issues that we face that will affect food security going forward is water. As you know, the type of climate change that we're having is really impacting agriculture negatively, but we have cycles of drought followed by cycles of intense rainfall and so forth. So we need to look at more efficient ways of harvesting water through our, sources that we have available. 90% of the farmers in Jamaica depends on rainfall for agricultural purposes. So we need to create a more sustainable source. Tractor service is another key areas to increase production that we could collaborate on equipment to support agriculture on a commercial basis. This is something that we can look at to increase our production and productivity. We collaborate with many stakeholders in the past, and we hope to collaborate with them in the future going forward. Some of them are listed here, both local and international partners. Partnership development, we have developed partnership with some local agencies through memorandum of understanding, and they are listed there, and we hope to seek international partners in order to create that bond to improve our food security going forward. And that's it, my presentation in a nutshell, and I really thank you for listening and hope that we can make necessary contacts to support our agriculture sector in Jamaica going forward.
All right, so my big gratitude should be given to Mr. Peter Thompson because he made a great, talk, even though he has some technical problem and then different time zone in Jamaica. So I think his presentation is like a good source for us to talk and discuss further how to collaborate in Caribbean, especially Jamaica and South Korea, in the process of COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so I think that we are now quite behind the schedule, and that we have another session that's closing ceremony. So we'll use the 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A, for the discussion. So let me open the floor. So if you have any question, just raise your hands and identify yourself, and please make your question very short because of time limit. Yes, gentlemen in the back.
Yes, I will make it very brief. My question goes to the gentleman from Rural Development Administration. I am Han Kyung-chun from Korea Electricity Agency. So we are now working on electricity development in those areas, but and during this pandemic, we procured toolkits and other equipment to Jamaica as well. I believe that there is a big potential for agricultural sector in Jamaica as well. I am curious whether the coal field project that you mentioned during your presentation could also be implemented in Jamaica. For now, the Republic of Jamaica, if they send an official request to us, we are willing to do that, but we haven't received any official request from the government of Jamaica.
Are you okay with this response? All right. So any other questions, comments? So any intervention, if you like. So feel free to ask. Otherwise, actually, very smartly, the secretariat they ask, I think, some the relevant institution to ask a question. So pre-questions. So they collect the 3 questions, but already one question is exactly the same thing to the Mr. Kwon, and then another question is given to Professor Han. But yeah, I have to translate. So written in Korean. So in order to self-reliance in agricultural sector, it is very important, especially giving the motivation to the farmers. So what kind of cases in South Korea, to be learned by some developing countries, especially the motivation for the farmers?
I think it's a big challenge. In 1970s, 60s, Korea had the policy of dual price policy. Government buy rice from the farmers at a higher price than at the market price, but government sell the rice to the consumers at a lower price. At that time, Korea was not what Korea is now. At that time, Korea was quite poor, but the government was quite resolute to solve this food shortage. So they gave us some quite big incentive for farmers. I think that is one issue. So I think we can find some incentives depending on the situation. So nowadays, the rice is not so serious problem in Korea. So we invent other various incentives for local people, Korean farmers. So we ask Korean farmers to organize something for new project, then the government gave some big funds with some conditions, agreements, with mutual accountability. So I cannot say we have only one solution. I think it would be various depending on the situation. Thank you.
So can I use the 1 minute? Yes, actually, I have the question. Question is very difficult to answer. It's like this. I think the exactly same notion is already recommended by the whatever keynote speaker today, the Secretary General CARICOM. Actually, at the end of the talk, he just emphasized why and how the Caribbean states, especially GNI per person. So actually, the ODA standard is defined by the OECD DAC. They have the list of the recipient countries in accordance with the GNI per person. So the Caribbean states are relatively higher than threshold. So they are not target of ODA provision by the OECD DAC member countries. So-called the middle income country trap. So how the Caribbean state can receive the ODA even though their GNI per person is larger than the standard of the OECD DAC. So it's a very difficult question, and then all the UN conferences and side events, Latin American country representatives, they ask the question to the floor, and then speakers and presenters, especially the high rank of the UN persons. So, but I don't have the fine answers. But maybe you can use the new concept of ODA, so-called TOSSD, Total Official Support for Sustainable Development. It's claimed by Japan and France and Germany. I think back in 2016 and 2018, all the OECD member countries used that standard to report their ODA, the calculation. So the TOSS means we can make some big space in which the private sector can be engaged. So the so-called PPP, private-public partnership. It could be the very good springboard for, I think, the non-state actors and also especially the private sector to engage with the projects. So private sector, they don't care, right? This is a fragile state or the middle-income country. They need some kind of the new market. So we can use the ODA as like a catalyst to invite and then mobilize the private sector engagement. So in that sense, the tourism or touring industry and the Caribbean state probably quite easily, relatively, connected to the private sector collaboration in the form of the PPPs. So it's not a good answer to the question though, but probably you can think of. All right, so any further questions and comments from the floor? All right, okay. All right, okay, so it's time to finish, close this session because we're running out of time. So thank you very much indeed, especially three speakers, especially Peter Townsend from Jamaica, and also two distinguished speakers in here, Mr. Kwon and Professor Han. I do hope that we can have another chance, another opportunity to discuss further, especially more specific, concrete ways to collaborate the Caribbean region, CARICOM, and South Korea in many, I think, the ways. All right, so thank you again, and then the bon appetit. You have, after the closing ceremony, everyone getting hungry, so we prepare, I think, that the lunch. All right, thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 두 번째 세션 진행을 맡아주신 김태균 교수님과 또 소중한 시간을 내어 고견을 들려주신 한국 카리브 지역의 모든 참석자분들께도 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for moderating this session, and thank you all the presenters from the Caribbean country as well as Korea. Please give them another big round of applause. 네, 이제 오늘 포럼을 마무리할 시간인데요. 마지막으로 카리브 공동체 의장국인 세인트 빈센트 그레나딘의 샌디 피터스 필립스 외교통상부 차관님께서 폐의 말씀을 전해주시겠습니다. Now we're about to conclude this prestigious forum today. To begin the closing ceremony, I'm pleased to have Sandy Peter Phillips, who is Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Commerce, St. Vincent's and the Grenadines. She will deliver the closing remark. Please welcome her with the big round of applause. 네, 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good evening from the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is an honor for me to bring closing remarks on behalf of the Caribbean community at the 10th Forum on Korea-Caribbean Partnership, which is being held under the theme Korea-Caribbean Comprehensive Partnership in the post-COVID-19 era. Excellencies, at the outset, it should be recognized that although present challenges prevent us from meeting physically, I express CARICOM's sincerest gratitude to the government of the Republic of Korea for facilitating the hosting of this important forum. The theme chosen is not only timely, but critical for the survival of our peoples. Additionally, I wish to take this opportunity to express special commendation to the Chair, His Excellency Choi Jong-chun, First Vice Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Over the past months, the global pandemic of the coronavirus, or the COVID-19, has upended the way we have become accustomed to live, work, and leisure. This pandemic undoubtedly has spread to all regions of the world, and no country cannot say that it is immune from the deleterious health and socio-economic effects of the virus. Given the interconnectedness of the world's people through transportation, migration, global communication, and trade, the infectivity of COVID-19 has either engulfed or touched physically almost every country on the earth, including developed and developing countries. In the Caribbean, all CARICOM member states have reported positive COVID-19 cases. In some states, the spread of the coronavirus has been wider and more challenging than others. In a smaller number of Caribbean countries, there have been connected deaths. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, recent data shows that there have been 75 positive cases. Of that number, 70 persons have recovered, 5 are still active, and there are no deaths to date. Our government's approach has always been to follow the science, act prudently on the medical advice of the professionals in the health sector, primarily the astute advice of the World Health Organization, WHO, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA. Further, the importance of observing practical experiences of other countries worldwide in shaping appropriate responses through policies and practical measures to our circumstances must be underscored to address this global pandemic. Excellencies, this forum provides such a platform for the exchange of ideas, practical measures, and the best practice that can be adopted and implemented to address the immense challenges of COVID-19, particularly the health, socio-economic, and the security impact of COVID-19. The interconnected and the interdependency realities of the global economic order makes COVID-19 an existential phenomenon that can render developing countries, especially small island developing states, and their people destitute. The travel and tourism sector has been seriously damaged globally. The health sectors in many countries are now under strain from the ramifications of COVID-19. Trade in goods and services are in the slump everywhere. Food insecurity is now increasingly threatening states' ability to achieve the 2 and 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Additionally, remittances and investments are dwindling or have come to an halt in some instances. Revenues of governments are falling sharply. External supports for developing countries are limited. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to a dramatic loss of human life worldwide and presents an unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems. Tens of millions of people are at risk of falling into extreme poverty, while the number of undernourished people, currently estimated at nearly 690 million, could increase by up to 132 million by the end of the year. Thus, it is fair to state that the post-COVID era will be extremely difficult and a challenging period for all economies, but more so for the small island developing states like those in the Caribbean region. Excellencies, the need for strategic partnership is even more critical to address efficaciously the challenges associated with COVID-19. In this context, the present forum not only reaffirms the valued friendship and the solidarity which exists between CARICOM and the Republic of Korea, but provide a renewed commitment of this partnership which is needed on all fronts to strengthen our public health system and to establish appropriate policy framework and mechanism to reduce the economic and social fallout of this debilitating virus. To this end, we welcome the valuable contribution of US $1 million by the Republic of Korea to the Caribbean community to support member states' efforts to readjust and strengthen our public health systems in response to COVID-19. Such contribution is very much appreciative. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in the capacity of chair of the Caribbean community, would like to take this opportunity to reiterate the need for adequate and vital support from the international community to aid in the stability, recovery, and sustainable development of our region. We welcome the various collaborative measures and actions which are proposed and discussed today. Notwithstanding, it is important for us to highlight the critical importance for the development and use of universal vulnerable index rather than relying solely on the GDP per capita to determine countries' eligibility for development assistance. Given the region's persistent and endemic challenges related to climate change, other natural disasters, and environmental risk, there is a need to promote rural transformation and to increase domestic agriculture production so as to ensure that health and the nutrition benefits of our citizens are secured. We note the achievements of the Republic of Korea and recognize the need for both CARICOM and South Korea to develop long-term sustainable strategies addressing the challenges facing health and agri-food sectors. Priority should be given to addressing the underlying food security and malnutrition challenges, tackling rural poverty, in particular through more and better jobs in the rural economy, extending social protection to all, facilitating safe migration pathways, and promoting the formalization of an informal economy. Excellencies, despite the relatively low level of outbreak in the Caribbean, comparison to Latin America, North America, Europe, and Asia, CARICOM governments have largely reacted swiftly and preventatively, taking an array of measures to protect their citizens and contain COVID-19 spread. Therefore, the need for a vaccine is ever critical. It is imperative the Republic of Korea supports the region in ensuring that the United Nations Resolution 74 of 274, entitled International Cooperation to Ensure Global Access to Medicine, Vaccine, and Medical Equipment to Face COVID-19, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in April of this year, is realized whenever a viable vaccine developed is available to all humanity at the lowest cost possible. Excellencies, since the signing of the agreement for the establishment of a consultation and cooperation mechanism between CARICOM and South Korea in 2006, followed by an inaugural meeting of both parties in 2007, CARICOM and the Republic of Korea have built up a solid partnership in areas of mutual interest at bilateral, regional, and global levels. Nevertheless, there is need for increased support towards building capacity and knowledge sharing to reinvigorate the consultation and cooperation mechanism which was established 12 years ago to guide the future of CARICOM and Korea's relations. I therefore urge Korea continued assistance in utilizing its influential voice in international fora to advocate on behalf of CARICOM member states on issues which we have discussed today, especially the matter of the status of the highly indebted and vulnerable middle-income countries, especially SIDS, and the resulting loss of the access to concessionary financing for our development programs, and addressing COVID-19, including our ability to exist in a post-COVID-19 era. Excellencies, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the rest of CARICOM stands ready, resolute, and focused in providing the political will needed to ensure the building and consolidating of the comprehensive partnership in the post-COVID-19 era for the achievement of the 2030 Development Agenda. Excellencies, I am confident that based on the discussions that were held here today, that as a region, with the support of the Republic of Korea, we shall triumphant over all the pain and the suffering, the hardships, the challenges in the complex time of COVID-19 and the subsequent post-COVID-19 era. Therefore, in this environment, it is only through working together with mutual support and by remaining optimistic, we can achieve the most beneficial outcome for our peoples. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
네, 차관님 감사드립니다. 긴 시간 함께해 주신 모든 분들께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 이상으로 제10차 한-카리브 고위급 포럼을 모두 마치겠습니다. Thank you very much for your wonderful remark. We are now concluding all the great journeys of the 10th high-level forum on the Korea-Caribbean partnership. We hope that it had become a time to prepare for a better future of our partnership. We send you a farewell here. Thank you for being with us today. 네, 그럼 저는 여기서 인사드리겠습니다. 함께해 주신 여러분 고맙습니다.